so many people to have a better life. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if we need a microphone, but
yeah, we're all deaf.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Right. Well, I'm Clifford Hill. I'm the chair of the Tools for Self Reliance Coventry and Warwickshire volunteer group. And we're known also as Tools Abroad because we're part of a national charity and our national office encourages us to take up a local name. I'm not quite sure of the reasoning behind that. But nevertheless, Tools for Self Reliance is, now I'll go through the structure of the talk. I'll give you some background to the charity, the work we do. Dorcas will present our feature on haberdashery. So we collect tools and equipment and haberdashery, and essentially we export these things to Africa. And at the end we'll have a question and answer session, and we're happy to take any questions from any feature of the project. So if I can start off with, here we go. So, right. This is just background, just bear with me, it's important to understand all this stuff. We have a legal status. Tools for Self-Reliance is part of a national charity, TFSR, based in Southampton. They have an office, a headquarters in Netley Marsh. Registered company limited by guarantee. And essentially, the description of what we do is what you might call international development. And I've spoken to one or two of the Rotary members when we were waiting, and I think there's some understanding amongst the group of this type of work. Essentially, we help disadvantaged individuals and communities in Africa. And the way we do that is that we collect tools, hand tools, old spanners, pliers, whatever comes our way. We sort them all out, and then essentially we take them down to our national office once a year. Either we sell them locally, so we do car boot sales, street sales, markets, and that sort of thing. We sell online, but anything that's left over goes into a van, take it down to Southampton, it's all sorted out again, goes into a container, then goes out to Africa. So essentially what we do is put tools into good, productive use on the African continent. So that's the ethos, the working method, as you might say, is based on practicalities. So I'll come on to this bit in a second. But the thinking behind it is that the local groups and individuals in Africa benefit from direct local level intervention rather than state-led intervention. So the foreign aid budget that comes from the UK is entirely different to what we do. This helps groups and individuals at very much a local level. So hence the logo, practical help for practical people. The mission to reduce poverty in Africa, to help build sustainable livelihoods and so on, is basically to encourage people to become self-reliant. Hence the strapline, the name of the organisation, Tools for Self-Reliance. The working method is to work with partner organisations in Africa. So when the tools arrive in Africa, Tools for Self-Reliance, TFSR, works with local groups who are already networked in Africa, so they're evenly distributed. And essentially what Tools for Self-Reliance does is that the funds that are raised in the UK are used to provide training for individuals in Africa. So we don't just give them tools, they're trained in specific trades, for instance, electrical trades, fixing electrical goods, carpentry, blacksmithing, they are practical trades which require a certain set of tools. They're also trained in financial management. So essentially, it's a provision of a 12-month training course with practical elements and also training in how to manage a business and how to manage your own financial affairs. And the whole thinking behind it is to encourage self-reliance so that people, they learn a trade and then they sell their skills in the community. And now the IT's let me down.
Could you just use the arrow keys?
No. Okay. Right, okay. So that is, that's an illustration of the sort of thing we do. And the individuals are trained, they learn a trade basically, and then they sell their skills in the community. And this is an extract from the TFSR promotional material. And how are the tools used in Africa? Now, we did a talk to the Provost group the other week, and there were a lot of questions about how the tools are actually used. And as well as facilitating training, so a pair of pliers, saw, spanners, all that sort of thing, they're useful. They're surplus to requirements in the UK. They find a use in Africa. They are then assembled into what are known as toolkits. So the participants on the training, at the end of the 12-month training program, they're issued with a toolkit, basically a toolbox. And that is made up of items that are donated from the UK. And what's different about Tools for Self-Reliance is TWAM, Tools with a Mission, operate in the same sort of space, as you might say, in Africa, but they operate on a huge scale, and we're very much smaller than that. But what is different about TFSR is that the money that is raised by the respective volunteer groups in the UK, so the Coventry and Warwickshire volunteer group, the money is not just put into a general pot and then it's distributed out to Africa. The money stays allocated to a particular project. So one project that was funded recently in Uganda and previously in Ghana was something called the Street Girls Aid Program, which assisted vulnerable women who were vulnerable in whatever circumstance they found themselves in to learn a trade and to become self-employed and to earn a living and to remove themselves from the situation they're in. Oops. And again, that's an illustration from our literature. It's not very clear, I'm afraid, but it gives a flavour of what the project is about. The countries that we're active in are Ghana, Malawi, Sierra Leone, Uganda and Zambia. We used to be involved in Tanzania, but that has since stopped. The background to the project, again, this is all sort of slightly academic in a way, but in 1974, a chap called Glyn Roberts wrote a book saying that international development in Africa wasn't working. What was needed was local level intervention. So instead of giving countries foreign aid, give local communities tools and practical skills to help themselves. The first collection took place I think it was in Portsmouth in 1978, and then the first shipment went out in 1979. So in 5 years, from somebody writing a book to a container going out full of tools. Charity status in 1982, and premises were found in Southampton. And that is the header from the Tools for Self-Reliance promotional literature. The Coventry and Warwickshire volunteer group, founded in 1992, essentially from members in Kenilworth, but latterly more so now in Coventry. A dozen volunteers. We have a workshop at Bablake School. Bablake School have said they've given us free use of a workshop which we use on a Tuesday evening. We're one of 30 plus volunteer groups across the UK, And in 2022, I think when, as you might say, we're at the peak of our powers, I mean, we've since downsized a bit, we were making approximately £7,000 a year from the sale of tools from garage sales, car boot sales, markets, and so on. So all of the tools that were donated really were then converted into money, and the tools that were not sold were then shipped out to Africa. And that's a picture of the group, and that was on the day when we were using, one of our volunteers were using his garage mainly for the sale of tools, but we had to empty the garage but essentially a group of a dozen or so volunteers, we all work together and we all have different ways of contributing. What we do, the responsibilities and functions, I'm the chair, there's a deputy chair, we have governance, marketing, online selling, haberdashery. We have an event called Tea for Tools, where one of our organisers arranges an annual social event. And this year, she raised £590 from 2 coffee and cake sales, essentially, which is quite good. We have administration, financial administration, presentations, such as we're doing today, and collections. And collections, that is donations, collections of donated tools. We're quite well organised. We have to be, because we're bound by what's called a memorandum of understanding with the National Office. We're also bound by Charity Commission rules, so we have to have a paper trail and audit trail for everything we do. Again, that's once a year a van comes up from Southampton and collects any unsold items. They're taken down to the National Office, then they're sorted again and they're graded, and then they're all put in containers and then shipped out to the various countries. Some of the things we do: tool sales. We have an online presence. We advertise on Coventry, Prelove, Facebook Marketplace, eBay and Etsy. We have one of our volunteers who does all of the online selling stuff. We collect donated tools, we collect haberdashery and equipment. We're not always offered tools. Very often we're offered, sometimes, once we were offered a collection of pictures, and somebody said they were doing a house clearance or whatever it was, hundreds of pictures, which we put up for sale at a tool sale. We didn't sell many of them. I don't know what happened to them in the end, but nevertheless we took them in the spirit of raising money for the project. The liaison with the National Office, that's mainly my responsibility as chair. We have the governance in place, and I make sure that everything we do is in keeping with what the National Office wants us to do. We also have relations with agencies, such as, in particular, with Voluntary Action Coventry. One of our volunteers has come to the project through VAC. I came to the project indirectly through Voluntary Action Coventry, through something called the Accelerate programme, for which VAC are the agents, which is to encourage people who are unemployed or who are not working or want to do something useful to enter into useful, productive work. We have a website, which is toolsabroad.com, and the national TFSR website, tfsr.org. And of course we have the workshop at Bablake School. We're also networked with St. Giles Church in Exhall. And the previous chair of the group, he has since retired from the project. We used his garage for the sales, had an enormous volume of tools. We had to remove them down to our head office. So we're rebuilding the project, essentially. And from basically a standing start of pretty much no stock at all 6 months ago, we're now doing really well. We've got a lot of stock, we're selling, gradually building up. We made £200 recently from online sales alone, which is pretty good.